Hey y'all, did you know that I've done some other book reviews? Go to the search bar, type in book review, and you'll find them easily. Thanks for watching, guys. Hey y'all, welcome back to Tobacco Leaf Legacies. I'm Cheryl, and welcome back to another brew and review. All right, today we have got a really fun book that I've actually had this book for a while. And I finally got around to reading it. Y'all, I've been catching up like the last year or so with everything going on. You know how it's been. But this time we are reviewing The Man Behind the Magic, The Story of Walt Disney by Catherine and Richard Green. Now, I am a Disney nut. Anybody that knows me knows how very much I like Disney. My first Disney trip was actually in the womb. Yes, I'm counting it. My mom went in, let's see, I believe it was, I'll probably post a picture here. She went with, Dad and my brother and all that in, I think it was April of '74, and I was born in June. So I don't know if it was one of those, oh, let's go walk around and maybe help this along kind of thing, or if it just happened to, that was just the time when they wanted to go. I don't know, but that was my first trip. And then of course we went again when I was probably 5, 6 years old, something like that. I have made numerous trips growing up. I think I probably had a couple school trips. I remember it was 8th grade. It's 8th grade, right? That we had a grad night there. That was kind of interesting. You could only, girls had to dress up. It was like this whole dress up thing. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you remember? And that kind of stuff. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. And then of course, as I became an adult, I still enjoyed going. I love the parks. It just, I guess it's one of those things that you either, I don't want to say you either get it or you don't, because a lot of people love Disney and there's all varying degrees about how people like it. But for some of us, it does a little bit more than just provide us entertainment. Of course, there's the nostalgic, factor. So, when you're like that and you go back to a place that you went when you were little, of course it stirs up all those, wonderful memories. But it is an escape for me. It is a place that I can go and I can forget about what is happening in my life. I was a pass member, annual pass member, for the first time in the early 2000s, I think. And it was fun because I got to go a lot, see a lot of different things, and that was neat. But I didn't fully embrace the annual pass holder bit until 2019. That was the next time that I did it. And in 2019, there was a lot going on in my life. There was a lot that was not good. To just be very honest about that, it was not good and I was not in a good place. And I'm going to tell you that it made my year. It did things, it provided a place where I could go and be happy and give my little brain a break from all of the very stressful, very upsetting, trauma-inducing things that were happening in my life. And I decided that because I just had so much fun. Now, it's not something I can do every year. There's a lot of people that they go, it's every year. And I can't do that because when I'm a pass holder for something, I invest so much time and stuff into it that I kind of need to just do it for a year at a time. So I decided in 2019, okay, well, you know what? In 5 years, when I turn 50, I'm going to do the pass holder thing again. And that's going to sort of be my big birthday present to myself. Not only turning 50, but basically embarking on a new half of my life. I have said before, you've heard me if you've watched other videos, I'm going into the second half of my life without a lot that it's all I've known, without the parents, without the grandparents, home and land, and just without these things that have just been the biggest part of my life. And so it's like, okay, well, all this year is a party, and what better way to do that than to be an annual pass holder? So that is actually, I'm filming this in mid-April, and it is actually starting this Sunday, and I'm going to Animal Kingdom, and I am like a little kid. I even have a little countdown on my computer. Yep, that's right. I have a little countdown on my computer because I'm that excited. Look, y'all, whatever brings you happiness, whatever makes you giddy and feel like a little kid, embrace it. It doesn't matter if it's silly, and it certainly doesn't matter if anybody else thinks you're silly for it or whatever. Brings you happiness and peace and makes your head happy, do it. A little PSA for today, right? Okay, so all that to lead up to this book. I mean, we wouldn't have all of that. We would not have these wonderful places and theme parks to go without Walt. I had heard, I've seen different interviews, and I follow a couple YouTube accounts that are amazing with providing information about the parks. And just side note here, if you are interested in going to the parks, or if you go a lot, or if you are interested in getting help, because let's face it, you just don't go to the park anymore on a spur of the moment kind of thing and think that you're going to be able to do anything at this point. I mean, you've got to plan, you've got to get tickets and lightning lanes and all sorts of stuff. So if you are interested in getting a little help, I highly, highly, highly recommend looking up Disney Food Blog. Okay, that's one. allears.net. Okay, that's two. And look up Mammoth Club. Those three accounts right there are going to give you more information than you know what to do with as far as Disney and planning for Disney is concerned, but it's going to be so helpful. So listening to those, as I have done watching them over the last few years, you get a lot of information about Walt and how he started and how some things came about and his involvement in the parks and the rides, and just you pick up some of that. But there was information in this book that I'd never known, that I never heard before, nothing. I didn't know what to expect when I started reading it. I mean, obviously I knew it would be about Walt, but I wasn't sure how they were going to navigate his story. And it was amazing. So the synopsis of the book is The Man Behind the Magic is about the story of Walt Disney and all that his life entailed leading up to the creation of Disneyland and Disney World. My overall opinion of the book, I loved it. I learned so much about him and how he rallied back from a near catastrophe more than once to become the success that he ended up being. So if you are a Disney fan, which I know there are a lot of us out there, if you are a Disney fan, I highly, highly encourage you to read this book. All right, so now let's get into the questions.
What do you think about the cover?
What did I think about the cover? Well, it's fine. It's fine. My book was printed in the very early 90s, and it looks like it. If you remember some of the design that we had in the 90s, it definitely looks like that. I even kind of feel like it maybe brought some of the 80s with it, which I'm not mad about that. I like the 80s. There is a more recent version with a different cover, a more updated cover, if you will, that I do like a bit better.
Is the title an accurate representation of the story?
Yep, title couldn't be any more accurate. The story is about Walt Disney, and it's the man behind the magic, and he was absolutely the man behind the magic.
What did you learn from the book?
I just learned so much. It was such a joy to read. I think the biggest, probably most important thing I learned was just how crucial Roy Disney, that's Walt's brother, was to Walt's success. While Walt was the creative genius with his head in the clouds, so to speak, Roy was the business manager, the controller of the money, the one who kept Walt as grounded as possible, which was no easy feat, apparently. Roy was vitally important to Walt's success, and I didn't realize just how instrumental he was to that. Also, we have Walt Disney World, and all that entails in Orlando because of Roy. Did y'all know that? We have what we have in Orlando because of Roy. And that's right. When Walt passed, Roy was determined to keep their plans moving forward, even though his brother had passed. And we are so grateful that he did, because we came really close to not having that. They were at a point that they very easily could have canceled everything and said, Walt's gone. Let's just stop. And Roy said, no. This was important. This is important to everybody. This was important to my brother, and we're going to keep going, which is amazing. Also, I learned about Walt's childhood, how driven and creative he was from such a young age, and how he was very much a balanced mix of his parents' personalities. That's something that I'm just kind of curious about. I'm always curious to see somebody's family, to see their parents, just to see where they got their influences from, where they got their little personality traits from, and all that. Maybe it's just because I'm so interested in ancestry that I automatically kind of look at that. But Walt was really a very nice balance between both of his parents. I learned that Walt joined the Red Cross Ambulance Corps, having fibbed about his birthday, but then came down with Spanish influenza before eventually being sent to France to serve at just 17.
What is your favorite quote or chapter?
Do you remember Ray Kroc? He's the man that invented McDonald's, right? Well, he served with Walt in the Corps and said this about Walt. Walt was regarded as a strange duck. Aren't all creative people strange dogs? Anyway, Walt was regarded as a strange duck because whenever we had time off and went on the town to chase girls, he stayed in the camp drawing pictures. And I read that, and that just made me laugh, so much, because I feel like highly creative people don't follow the norm because they have their own norm. They have their own normal, and their interests are just not the same as, quote, everybody else. And so I got a kick out of that quote, and I got a kick out of the fact that the McDonald's guy served there with him. I thought that was cool. There was another quote that I liked. This is one by Walt. He said, "I worry more when things are going good than when I'm in the middle of a fight. When everything's going good, I worry that something's going to blow up any minute." This one, when I read it, it hit me right here, mainly because of what I'm coming off of the last number of years. Since my dad passed in 2018, there's been a lot of turmoil. There's been a lot of very serious situations that happened. There have been many chats with many lawyers about many different things, and I really can't even begin to express how serious and how traumatizing the last number of years have been dealing with that side of things. And this quote hit home with me for that reason. My brother and I, as we were making discoveries about things, we just kept getting hit and hit and hit and hit, and we couldn't like handle and process one thing before something like another bomb was dropped on us, and then another one, and then another one, and it really created, it really messed us both up for some time. And when I read this about Walt, I just kind of stopped and went, oh my God, yeah, like, yes, that's it. When the bombs kind of stopped, I mean, we still, even though the bombs stopped, I'm calling it, we still then had to navigate everything that we had found out and everything that we had discovered and all of that. But unfortunately, it created in me this thought that if there's not bad happening, like if things are just smooth sailing, well, it means it's going to happen any second. So I need to be on guard for that. And that's a trauma reaction, folks. I did not know that either until a few years ago, but it is a trauma reaction by the body. And I know some of you have been through situations in your life when you've had things like that. And when you get past, like, I guess the most severe part of it, but yet you're still carrying some of that with you and you're having reactions to things that you don't really understand, that's why. It is a trauma reaction. And when we've had such bad stuff happen, we're afraid to go forward and not have bad stuff happen because it puts us on guard and it puts us on, okay, all right, what's going to happen now? What's going to happen now? And it makes us very hypervigilant about going through life, and that creates issues in our own nervous systems and all that. And not to turn this into a medical thing, but that's what that quote brought me back to. And it was just like, wow, he had the same feeling that I have. You know, he dealt with some situations in his life that were very serious, that could have ended his business more than once. And he started to feel that way. He started to feel like, wow, when everything's like really, really good, like, what's going to blow up? What's going to happen? And that one really hit home with me.
What did you like best and least?
All right, what did I like best and least? The least was, I was really sad when I read about what happened to Walt's mom that led to her passing. And I think that the loss and the way that it happened caused more trauma for him, and that he had to deal with that for the rest of his life. There are jokes about how it is in a Disney movie unless the main character loses a parent, especially their mom. But I feel like that this was Walt trying to heal in the only way that he knew how. And that was through animating and storytelling. You know, sometimes we all have different ways of processing loss and grief and all that. He was so creative and so expressive in his creation that for something to have hit him so deeply like that, I think his main way of handling it was to put it in his stories. I've written fan fiction, okay? I've written fan fiction for years, and I will wholeheartedly admit that I have taken situations in my life and put them in story form. And part of it was because it was a way to work through it. It was another way to, I don't know, try to figure it out, try to look at it from a different perspective, try to come to peace with it. I mean, you know, kind of whatever you want to say here, but I have done that as well. And so I absolutely understood that. And, you know, and it is something that for the longest time when I would see these, you know, movies, it was always like a parent and always mom. And it was like, what? Why do we have to have this? When I read this in the book about his mom, and after reading all that I read about Walt and his personality, now I look at it a lot differently. And I look at it with, I guess, a lot more compassion than I had previously. Because now, and see, this is the key to understanding. And this is, This is me at my absolute core. I need to understand whatever it is. I need to understand. It's not about agreeing or disagreeing, because you can understand something and still disagree with it. So it's not about agreeing and disagreeing. It is about understanding. And that is what my little brain is always searching for. It's what I'm always hoping for. It's what I'm trying to get from people. It's what I'm trying to give to people, because understanding is like the key. It is just the key in everything that we do. So when I can understand a situation, it changes it, positively changes it. And so it's kind of the same, with this. Now that I have a better understanding of Walt and what he went through and why he kept going back to this particular scenario because of what happened. Now that I understand that, I can see those parts in his stories now and feel compassion, because I'm like, that's Walt's mom. Like, that's his mom. And it was just so horrific how she passed that it's like, that's him trying to work through that. And so now there's compassion, and it makes all the difference in the world. Okay, so, and what I liked best, reading about how Disneyland came to be, Walt came up against a lot of criticism. I mean, as you can imagine, and including from some of those closest to him, which that happens sometimes. Sometimes those closest to us are our harshest critics, right? But when he had a vision about something, he was tenacious about following it through. Anytime that somebody is tenacious about how they live, about the choices that they make, about how they follow through, I 1,000% admire that. Now, obviously, there's times when we need to be a little more tempered and a little more, whatever, as we go through life. But we do need a little more tenacity sometimes, especially when it's things that are important to us, important to our being, important to our livelihood. We do need a little more tenacity with that. So he was very, very determined, and I love that. He had a knack for seeing what others were doing wrong in similar ventures and made sure to do his right. There are things that are still in place today in all of the Disney parks that happen because Walt himself put it in place for a specific reason. And something like, let's see. I don't know if you've noticed any of this or not. When you go to Disney, if you ask a cast member where something is, they will not point with one finger. You know why? Because that's considered rude in other countries. So they point with two fingers. They don't use one, they use two. So if you ask them for directions and they need to point, they will take two fingers and they will show you, because Walt wanted to be sure that he was not offending anybody. Okay, so no pointing. Also, very early when he was designing the parks, he said that he wanted a trash can and I forget what it is, it's like every 30 feet, 35 feet, something like that. Like he wanted one everywhere. And the reason why was because he kind of did a little study on his own and came up with a number as far as how many steps people would walk to look for a garbage can before just dropping it. Walt wanted a very clean, beautiful place that families could take their kids to. He was very determined to have that. It was very important to him. And so something like trash can placement and how many there are, they are still doing that today. You will find garbage cans everywhere. So there's no excuse for people to throw stuff because they're around, there's just so many, it's very easy to get to a trash can. Something else, when you go to the parks and you see cast members and that's a term that he also chose because he felt like everything was a show. Everything. Which meant as soon as they came around the bend from being backstage, which is what they called it, and as soon as they appeared in front of the public, they were on stage. And so they're all called cast members. Okay, so the cast members all have, of course, different uniforms, costumes, whatever you want to call them, working in the different areas. Well, he said, I don't want to see a Tomorrowland person in Frontierland because it's going to mess up what I'm trying to show all of the people that are here. We want to, completely immerse them in whatever land that they're in. And so something like that is going to mess it up. And so cast members have to be very careful about how they maneuver around the park and who sees them. And I mean, there's list after list after list of this kind of thing, that when cast members are hired today, that they are still taught these things. They are just unnegotiable things that they learn in the park because that's how Walt wanted it, because he saw that some other places and parks and things weren't doing that, and how it looked and it didn't look right, and how by changing those things it looked a whole lot better in his parks.
What feelings did the book evoke?
As you can tell, the book evoked a lot of happy feelings. There were also quite a few awe moments as I was going through and reading about different times in his life. And there were even some feelings of camaraderie, for lack of a better term, as I kind of learned that I shared some personality traits with Walt that I didn't know I had. Example, learning about how determined and just how tenacious he was with things. I have mentioned more than once, and I will probably continue to mention, that I live my life a certain way, and I do it without apology. And I have been this way all of my adult life, and it is probably because of events that happened when I was young and how that made me so aware of the clock ticking over my head. And that changed me. That changed me. In fact, if you want to know a little bit more about that, go back to my video. If you haven't already seen the video about why I end my every single video with Carpe Diem Seize the Day, go back and watch that, because I talk about why. I talk about the things that happened in my life that encouraged me to always have that at the end of my videos, but more importantly, to live a certain way and make decisions a certain way. Now, I don't mean I'd go through life and blinders on and ignoring everybody else. I mean, I don't mean any of that, but I don't miss opportunities in my life. And when it comes to things that are important to me and how I want to live and different things, I'm not compromising that. And so it was nice to see that in Walt. He was so determined and he had a vision, and regardless of what people were telling him, regardless of people trying to, oh, you can't do this, that's going to be too hard, that's going to be too much money, no. All these like negative things, he just kept on. It's like, nope, I see it, and I'm going to do it. And you just have to admire the hell out of somebody that has such determination, because think about when you've had moments in your life where maybe you wanted to do something or try something or whatever, and someone talked you out of it because they were saying things like that. Well, you can't do that. That's too hard. That's too much money. You're too old. You're too this. You're too that. Whatever it is. Think about that. How'd that feel? Feels crappy, doesn't it? You want somebody to encourage you and support you, not bring you down. Now, that's not to say you can't bring up a legit concern. I mean, that's one thing, but some people take it too far. And I think there are a lot of people that have given up things, choices, dreams, maybe, not because they chose to not do it, but because they were influenced from somebody else being little naysayers. And, and I think that's kind of sad. So the fact that he just was like, nope, 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 we're going to do this is amazing, because that's hard. It's really hard to tune people out and just stay so true to yourself and your dream and your vision.
What is the author's background on the subject?
Well, that's an interesting question, actually. Catherine, I looked this up to double check because I didn't know. Catherine and Richard are freelance writers who were able to have full access to not only the Disney archives, but also to Walt's wife, daughters, and other family members. There's nothing better than to be able to acquire information from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And they did an amazing job of creating a timeline of Walt's life. That's something that is also very important to me. If I'm going to read about something like this, Walt's life, let's start at the beginning. I want to be able to see how the story unfolded and all the things that happened in his life and how it affected him, good, bad, or indifferent. Start at the beginning. And so they really did hit on all of the big things that happened and created this just perfect timeline so you can follow along with everything that was happening and see how it all came to be what it is today. And the fact that they were able to go to the Disney archives and go straight to the family, I mean, you're not going to get any better sources than that.
What do you think was the author's purpose in writing the book?
I think they just wanted to tell the story of Walt's beginnings and the ups and downs that he faced in the infancy of Walt Disney Enterprises. And I think most of us, most folks, even a lot of fans, we don't know those stories. Like I said, you may hear a little thing here or there, you may read something at Disney somewhere. Maybe they have a little artifact of his and you get these little bitty tidbits of information, but you really have no idea about what he went through, especially in the beginning. And I think that's something too that we tend to think somehow in our brains that somebody who is successful now has always been successful. And 99% of the time, this is absolutely untrue. There's a show, Finding Your Roots, okay, on PBS. Have y'all heard of this or seen it? It is amazing. Again, of course, it's Ancestry. Henry Louis Gates sits down with celebs, and of course, they have an entire team that has pored over documents and pulled all this information together. But at the beginning of the show, they always talk to the celeb, and they hear about their upbringing, their childhood, and where they came from. And there are so many people that I think when you hear their stories, you're somehow surprised, like, oh wow, I didn't know they struggled like that. I didn't know they were that poor. I didn't know that this one lost their mom when they were 3 months old, or whatever it was. There's so much information like that we don't have. And it's important because those struggles and how somebody was raised and all of these things that happen throughout their life really makes or breaks you. And the people that are successful today were not always successful. And there were struggles, and there were money issues, and electricity being cut off, and sleeping in vehicles, and all of these things. And so it's always very interesting when you can go back and read about how somebody was when they were just getting started, and when they were struggling, and what they went through, and how they handled it. That's some of the best storytelling right there. And the way that they have put this together, it really shows you all the ups and downs that Walt went through.
Are there other books by the same author that you'd like to read?
There are, and I haven't read it yet. I looked up. They also wrote Inside the Dream, the personal story of Walt Disney. I don't know how many similar stories are shared in it. It does say on Amazon that more than 70 men and women were interviewed for that book, including friends, employees, historians, adversaries, rivals, and of course, family members. So I feel like that book, it probably takes this one, The Man Behind the Magic, and just goes even deeper into Walt's life, and especially into the memories and stories from other people. Because let's face it, that's another aspect of life that sometimes we forget. There's the person, but that person can seem like 20 different people depending on who they interacted with, what the situation was, you know, how things were handled, all of that kind of thing. So I feel like that would be a really cool book to read, because I would like to take what I've learned here and expand on it.
Would you recommend it to others, and or would you read it again?
Would I read it again and recommend it? Oh my gosh, yes, 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 like 1,000 times, yes. I want to go through and read it again, just, I don't know, probably just to get more information that I might have missed the first time, you know, or just get a little bit more understanding into Walt's life. So I would absolutely read it again. And if you have even this much interest in Disney, okay, even this much, absolutely read it, because it was created by one man, y'all. One man. Thankfully with his brother helping to, you know, push and orchestrate stuff, but it really was all one man. And it is astounding to think that we have what we have because of this one man. So this much interest in Disney, read the book so that you can really, really get a complete, well, not complete, so that you can just get a more well-rounded knowledge of just how everything came together. Okay, y'all, that is all for the questions. You know, we're so used to Walt and Disney being such a huge part of our culture. Most folks truly have no idea how close we came multiple times to not having any of it. But thanks to Walt's vision and his absolute fierce determination and tenacity, he was able to push forward and create stories and characters and park experiences that have changed and influenced the entire world.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
All right, guys, that concludes this brew and review. I hope you found it interesting. I hope maybe I piqued your curiosity about this book, about learning more about Walt. If you don't get this book, there are so many books about Walt. There are so many sources where you can read about him and hear about his stories and how he pushed forward so that we would have what we have today. I, for one, am absolutely grateful because it is my happy place, and I have no problem admitting that it is my happy place and that I turn into a big 4-year-old when I go. And yes, I hug the characters and I get their autographs and I do all that stuff. I do all that stuff because it brings me happiness. Brings me happiness, and why not? It brings me joy. Search for the joy. Find the joy. That's what he was looking for. He was looking for the joy in the creating of the stories and bringing families together and all of that. This was an amazing book. I encourage you to get it. As always, time is precious. Carpe diem. Seize the day. I'll see you next time.